because you can't see it. Now I got nothing to lose. Welcome, 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 welcome. This is the 19th element. It's Wednesday, July the 29th, 2026. That's my son Kush and the Chromonauts in the background uh, singing We Got Nothing to Lose. And so I think we do have something to lose. So let's take a look at it. This is the 19th element, the 19th element being the second half of the survival show. We do the first half on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. That's called the Your Immunity Project. And it used to be a distinct difference between the two halves, but now they kind of blended. But now we're going to do a special presentation this evening. We tend to focus on current events, and we're going to do that. But we're going to take a deep historical look at the roots of the current world situation. If we take a look here, we're witnessing a world on fire. And if we don't watch out, we're going to burn up in it. And so America's on fire, Canada's on fire, most of Europe is on fire. There's fires breaking out in Australia, all over the place, volcanoes erupting all over the planet. Of course, strange weather events, heat domes, heat waves, killing tens of thousands of people. So the world is on fire. But of course, also the world is on fire because of the world war that some call the Third World War, and some call it the War of Armageddon, the Malhama, the great war between good and evil. And so we want to take a look at all of that this evening. We want to take a deep historical look and see if we can discover the roots of the evil that seems to be encompassing the world. And so buckle up, this might be somewhat of a different kind of a presentation. But before we get started with the main focus, we want to acknowledge the passing of a great brother of ours, the National Secretary of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Brother John Ali. And I had the opportunity to meet with Brother John Ali, what was it, maybe 3 years ago. He was living with his daughter in Philadelphia, and unfortunately he passed recently at the age of 99. And so to his dying day and to his credit, he was a staunch follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, eating one meal a day. And so many of the great accomplishments of the Nation of Islam are due to this man. A little background history on him. He happened to be one of the very first college graduates who joined the Nation of Islam. He was raised in Philadelphia. He was boyhood friends with someone who became very, very famous in Philadelphia, Minister Jeremiah Shabazz. And they were boyhood friends. They grew up together. And after high school, John Ali got a scholarship to attend a business college in New England. And when he returned after graduation, he found out that all of his boyhood friends had joined the Nation of Islam that he didn't know anything about. So once they schooled him on the teachings, he was introduced to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and became the National Secretary. And so many of the great accomplishments that the Nation of Islam is famous for are largely due to this man. So may Allah be pleased with his soul, because he certainly did his duty while he had it to do. And of course, in this picture, that's Minister James Shabazz, who was the minister for many, many years at Mosque Number 2 in Chicago. And of course, in the center, dear Holy Apostle himself, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So some other news. This is a little bit more positive. somebody sent me this flyer, the Nation of Islam 9 Mosque Service Initiatives, which I take it to mean the 9 ministries. Initial meeting, let's come together to build stronger communities. Yeah, I'm in favor of that. Let's begin to organize and build programs and projects to enable us to service the needs of our communities. All right, health choices, education, food preparation, proper use of artistic expression, family and relationships, and much, much more. And so the National Deliberative Dialogue has begun. And so these kinds of discussions are taking place all over the country. Now, the follow-up to the July 4th Congress on Deliberative Dialogue is to convene a series over the next 2 months, or month and a half really, between now and September 21st and 22nd. We want to have ministerial sessions, deliberative dialogue sessions concerning each ministry by itself, and devote an entire session to that one ministry or task force, because there's 11 task force groups as well. So on July the 4th, of course, we had a lot of presentations, but they were very, very limited, 10 minutes each. So nobody had a chance to really go in depth as to what they were really talking about. So with these ministerial sessions, you see, the opposite will be true. Each presenter will be given sufficient time to give a complete in-depth presentation that they desire to do. And so we haven't scheduled those sessions yet, but in the very near future, look out for it. And of course, you are invited to be present, and you are being invited to be a presenter. What new idea do you have concerning, this new world that is being brought in? And the garment of our nation are those 9 ministries. The garment is the government. This is not the government. This is the jokester. This is the joke. They say jokers, excuse me. Sometimes the jokers are wild in certain card games. Well, I think this is a wild joker. He's out of his mind. He's insane. And of course, he's the president of the United States, and he is literally insane. Now, in many presentations in the past, I pointed out the verse in the Quran that explains the insanity of Donald Trump, explains the insanity of the European leaders, and explains the insanity of the Israelis and others that seem to have gone berserk, seem to have gone savage, seem to have gone wild. And that is because in Surah 2 it says, how can those who consume riba stand on the day of resurrection except as one driven insane by the touch of Satan? Now, the word riba is often translated to mean interest on money, and that's truly what it is, usury, interest on money. But it's really any kind of unjust dealing, anything that's not fair, anything that's a jip, anything that's a fraud, anything that's not on the level, underhanded. You see, in unjust dealings. That's riba. So how can those who have consumed injustices like this, consumed interest, consumed usury, and made themselves rich as a result of that, how can they stand on the day of resurrection except as those driven insane by the touch of Satan? So that's what you're looking at. Why is Donald Trump insane? Because he has engaged in a lifelong career of usury, of unfair dealings, of fraud schemes, all kinds of dishonesty. And so the consequences have afflicted him, and now he is certifiably insane. Look at the Europeans. Look how insane they are and how devoid of common sense and rationality they are. Why? Because Europe has only waxed rich over the last few centuries because of the robbery of the rest of the world. And so they are literally being driven insane today. Whom the gods would destroy, they first make mad. So what are we looking at here? We're looking at the madness of a maniac. These are posts that actually are coming out of the office of the President of the United States, guardians of the world. He wants to charge everybody a 20% fee in the Strait of Hormuz, which is not even his property. The Straits of Hormuz are the territorial waters of Iran and Oman. The only thing Donald Trump can do with that is go home. But he calls himself the guardian angel, the guardians of the world, as he destroys the world. Or he thinks he's going to destroy the world if he doesn't get his way. Now, of course, all of the things that he's doing are criminal activities. These are criminal activities. And so people are on his trail because he's breaking everybody's law. He's breaking the 10 Commandments. He's breaking the commandments of Jesus. He's breaking the civil law, the criminal law. He's violating the Constitution. He's violating international law. He's violating the UN Charter. He's violating every treaty that the United States ever signed. Now, of course, he's not the first one in that regard, but he's probably the worst one. And so someone who was investigating him for some of these criminal activities, like the missing funds. What happened to the money? He says record sales of oil from Venezuela after they overthrew and kidnapped the elected leader of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, holding him in a cell in New York City. And now Trump says that they're making vast amounts of money from Venezuelan oil. But where's the money? People want to know, where's the money? Some say it's in a private account under his name in Qatar or Dubai. But wouldn't you know it, the prosecutor who's bringing charges against him, investigating this case, was killed on the street in New York City. Just like the International Criminal Court prosecutor, what's his name? Last name is Kareem Khan is his name, was recently removed from his post because he had brought an arrest warrant against Bibi Netanyahu for genocide. And of course, Bibi Netanyahu is in town. He's in town, along with Volodymyr Zelensky from Ukraine. They're all in town at the funeral of Lindsey Graham. I call him Lindsey. And of course, the last time Bibi Netanyahu came to town, he induced Donald Trump into another war, as he always does. Now, I don't know if he's going to speak before Congress at this visit, but the last time he was here, what did he get? 57 standing ovations from the members of Congress because all of them are bought and paid for by the Israeli lobby? And so Bibi Netanyahu seems to be more important and more popular with U.S. senators and congressmen than Donald Trump. Maybe if he ran for president of the United States, maybe he would win. Just like Donald Trump claims if he ran for president of Israel that he would win because they're two peas in the same pod or from the same pod. So attack Iran or we'll release your Epstein files. You see, that's what people suspect, that what's in the Epstein files is in the hands of the Israeli Mossad. And what's in the Epstein files is so terrible, so filthy, so horrible concerning Donald Trump and his affiliation with Jeffrey Epstein, who for 10 years was his best friend. And so blackmail is being used to coerce the president of the United States into doing the bidding of another nation. Must be something really terrible in those files. Now, this is important. The National Defense Authorization Act that was recently passed by Congress means that the Israeli and the American militaries have now been merged into one unified military structure. Think about the implications of that. There is no such thing anymore as an independent U.S. military. The Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, the Army, the Space Force, the CIA, and other intelligence agencies are now merged with the Israeli Defense Force and the Israeli Mossad. So now, if you had Donald Trump and Bibi Netanyahu in the same room, who do you think would outsmart who? If you had Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, if he was in the same room negotiating with the defense chief in Israel. His name is Israel Katz. Who will come out on top? Who's the smartest one? Who's the most devious? Who's the trickiest? And so you see that if Donald Trump still thinks that he is the commander in chief of the U.S. military, I think he better think again, because he has just been moved aside by Bibi Netanyahu. Bibi Netanyahu is the commander in chief of U.S. and Israeli military forces. And those combined forces are being used to attack Iran and anybody else that is in the way of the Greater Israel Project. The Greater Israel Project means that Israel has to conquer parts of Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Turkey, Iraq, and obviously Iran and Saudi Arabia and the Arab Emirates in between. And then they'll be done, so they say. So this National Defense Authorization Act combines the two militaries. This is a marriage of two aggressive military forces that right now are in violation of every international law that exists, that violate the laws of war. Yes, there's laws of war. There's a right way and a wrong way to wage war. And so they're violating the laws of war, they're violating international law, they're violating international treaties. So this is perhaps the greatest evil that has ever come upon the earth. When you think about it, two nuclear powers, the U.S. and Israel, now united in an effort to destroy their neighbors in the Holy Land. So now let's take a little deep look into history and see what this might be all about. This is Khazaria, and this is an ancient map, as you see, the Khazar kingdom in the early 10th century. So we're going back almost 1,000 years. Well, we are going back 1,000 years. And you see the different areas of Europe, they weren't named by the nation states that they are today, but these areas were there. You see, and so in the middle you have Khazaria, that was a huge empire in the middle of what we might call today Eastern Europe. And so here's the Caspian Sea, here's the Black Sea, here's what we now call Ukraine, that used to be called Khazaria. Here's Hungary, here would be Poland today, we would call that Poland. And of course, Persia, today we call that Iran. And down here is Baghdad, that has always been Baghdad. And here was the remnants of the Holy Roman Empire as it existed 1,000 years ago. And smack dab in the middle is what is called Khazaria. Here's another map showing you a view of old Khazaria. Now it's relevant because Israel admits that the origin of their Eastern European Ashkenazi Jewish culture is old Khazaria. Israel admits the Khazar origins. Now, at the time that this article was written, there was talk that if the Jews had to leave present-day Israel, that they would resettle in ancient Khazaria, now called Ukraine. Ukraine is where Khazaria used to be. You could say that Ukraine is the modern Khazarian Empire. And so these are the people and what they look like. This was the leader, Bulan Kagan, was the leader of the Khazarian Empire. Let me see if I can blow this up a little bit. Shalom Aleichem, Bulan Sabriel, leader of the mighty Khazar kingdom, yours to command in a polyethnic and multi-faith state. occupying a prime trade nexus between East and West. Through cultural infusion and by welcoming educated Jews, your people rapidly absorbed many of the arts and technologies of civilization. As a result, the Khazars became urbanized, a rare feat for a tribal society from the steppes. You broke with tradition by adapting Judaism and making it the state religion, hoping to gain equal standing with your powerful neighbors, the Arabs and the Byzantines. Now, before they embraced Judaism, they were atheists. Mighty leader, you will rise again to transform your people and lead them to greatness, to halt the forces of Islam, yet promoting a remarkable tolerance. Can you build a civilization that will stand the test of time? So this was the Pax Caesarea. So now from this same region of the world was born a man that became known as the Reeb. And here's an image of what he looks like. He's long since passed away. In the 1994, I believe, was the year he passed away. Somebody can double check that. But this is the Reeb from Flatbush, Brooklyn, although he was born in Ukraine. He was born in Ukraine, but he became the leader of a Jewish sect called Shabbat, based in Flatbush, Brooklyn. So now you're looking at the spiritual leader of Bibi Netanyahu. You're looking at the spiritual leader of Donald Trump. You're looking at the spiritual leader of the Zionist movement in Israel. You're looking at the man who gave the framework, the philosophical, the theological framework for what is being done by both Israel and America. This is the resurrection of the old Khazar Empire. If Israel is a conquering state, what would be the final form that would emerge? The final form that would emerge would be the old Khazar Empire joined to what was conquered recently in the Holy Land. And that would be Pax Judaica, where world rulership would emanate from Jerusalem under the spiritual guidance of the Reeb. Now, to shed some light on what's taking place in different parts of the world, you have to understand that the agenda was outlined by the Reeb. What is going on in Ukraine is the execution of the instructions given by the Reeb. What's taking place in Palestine is being done according to the direction of the Reeb. Now, Shabbat leader, Messiah Menachem Mendel Schneerson, see, that's his complete name. Yes, he did die in 1994. Shabbat leader, who is considered by Donald Trump and Bibi Netanyahu and all of the members of the Shabbat sect, which includes Jared Kushner and the whole Trump family, they believe that Menachem Schneerson is the Messiah. And they further believe that by igniting the war of Armageddon, that will resurrect him from the dead. He will come back from the dead, and he will be the one that will rule the world from Jerusalem. This is what they believe. Now, I don't believe that. Maybe you don't believe that, but that's what Donald Trump believes. That's what Bibi Netanyahu believes. That's what these warmongers believe, and that's why they are doing what they're doing. Now, take a look at the words of the would-be Messiah. Slavs, and among them Russians, are the most unbending people in the world. Slavs are unbending as a result of their psychological and intellectual abilities, created by many generations of ancestors. It is impossible to alter these genes. Slav, Russian can be destroyed, but never conquered. That is why this seed is subject to liquidation. So you see what it's all about? People say, well, why would Volodymyr Zelensky in Ukraine, why would he sacrifice so far more than 1.8 million young Ukrainian men in a meat grinding war on the battlefront that they have no hope of winning? Well, these Slavs, Russians, can be destroyed, but never conquered. That is why this seed is subject to liquidation. They're being liquidated. And as many Russians as can be liquidated are being liquidated. Because why? They cannot be conquered. And what's the point? The point is conquest. So any people who cannot be conquered by these Jewish Zionists, by these Khazarians, if you will, to call them by their ancient name, if they cannot make you their slave, then you must be liquidated. And that's what's behind the depopulation agenda all over the earth. All of the people who it has been determined will not submit to their rule must be liquidated. So that includes all of the Muslims. There's no Muslim that is really a Muslim that is going to submit to the Khazars. So therefore the war against Islam, the war against Iran, the war against Russia, because Russia is a Christian nation. They know who the king is. The king is Jesus. According to them, they bow to King Jesus. They're not going to bow down to some rabbi in Ukraine. So therefore, they must be liquidated. Now, how about you? Will you bow down to these people? Will you bow down to the Reeb? Will you become his slave? He's promised the Jewish people that, I think the number is something like, he says that every Jew will have 4,200 slaves. The end result will be every Jew will have thousands of slaves at their beck and call. And that includes you. In the first Khazaria, the native people in the Ukraine were taken over by Jews and converted to Judaism. From the beginning in the 7th to the 10th centuries, a battle line had been drawn with Russia. Forts were located from 10 to 20 kilometers apart, creating what is in effect an unbroken line of military fortifications along the border of modern Russia and Russia. You see, and so that's what Russia is actually fighting against today. The battlements that were set up as long as 1,000 years ago in a constant, unending war against Russia that has had many phases, some to the detriment of Russia. So Ukraine and Russia explain what I just did. They have an unbending spirit. They will not submit to Jewish rule, so therefore they must be liquidated. So that's the attack against Russia. That's the attack against Islam. That's the attack against democracy. That's the attack against any people who wish to be free. If you will not submit, if you will not bow down, you see, then you must be liquidated. So this was given in a speech that was published in 1994, just before his death. So now here's a meeting between Bibi Netanyahu and the Reeb. Here's a meeting with Donald Trump and the Reeb. And here, how did Donald Trump run for office this time? He came out with some Trump sneakers, you know, because Trump has marching orders from the Reeb. So Shabbat leader Menachem Mendel Schneerson this is where I can't pronounce that town where he was born, Dnepropetrovsk in Ukraine. It's often called the city of the Reed. This is where he spent his teenage years. Now these are his teachings to his followers, people like Donald Trump. This is what they are being taught. This is what Bibi Netanyahu is being taught by his spiritual master. Murdering Goyim is like killing a wild animal. Goyim means anybody that's not a Jew. If a goy kills a goy or a Jew, he is responsible. But if a Jew kills a goy, he is not responsible. So in other words, Jews have a license to kill goy, non-Jews because non-Jews are animals. I guess the other term that was used recently in Palestine was Amalek. And here he says, show no mercy to the Goyim. So listen what he says. Jehovah created the non-Jew in human form so that the Jew would not have to be served by beasts. Let me read that again. Jehovah created the non-Jew, the Goyim, in human form so that the Jew would not have to be served by beasts. The non-Jew is consequently an animal in human form and condemned to serve the Jew day and night. That's what they believe. So it's good when you understand things from another person's point of view. See? So who is the Reeve is the shared hero of both Bibi Netanyahu and Donald Trump. They both worship the same thing. They both follow the same doctrine. And Russia has been an enemy of Khazaria and now Ukraine for about 1,000 years. Now this is the Russian coat of arms. And you can see, if I blow this up, you see the knight on the white horse killing the serpent. Well, in modern Russia, the knight on the white horse is Vladimir Putin. And he's killing the serpent in Ukraine. That old serpent, that old deceiver, that old liar, that old sinner, that corrupter. You see, there it is. That's another version of it. Brought up to date. Who's the human snake? Now, of course, we're used to human sacrifices right here in America, aren't we? This is Emmett Till, killed in 85 years ago. You see? And of course, the people who killed him were actually a part, whether they knew it or not, of what is called the Khazarian Mafia. We call it the Ku Klux Klan. And then we have people like this to defend us from such wickedness. Would you ever hire these people? Al Sharpton, the FBI informant, you know, and then there's the attorney Crump. And I don't know if did he ever win a case? I don't know. Did he ever get justice for anybody? So now what's taking place currently against these Khazarians? They call themselves Israelis. They call themselves Ashkenazis. They call themselves many different things. But basically, I showed you the historical foundation on which they rest and their historical tradition, their cultural tradition. And so in their war against Iran, you know, people say that Bibi Netanyahu suckered Trump into this war. No, he didn't. They're on the same page. They're following the same agenda. They're following the same program. They have the same leader. They have the same goals. They think the same. They believe the same. They're part of the same religion. And they've just hijacked the American military to carry out their agenda. But it's not going so well. Now, many remember, what was that, on June the 17th, Trump was forced to sign a memorandum of agreement with Iran. 14 points that gave control of the Straits of Hormuz to Iran. And also demanded that the U.S. remove its military presence from out of that region. Well, now, obviously, no one could expect that America would ever live up to any agreement that they signed. The Iranian foreign minister said that Trump's signature isn't worth the paper that is printed on it. And so it wasn't that the Iranians thought that the Americans were going to live up to that 14-point memorandum of understanding. I think there were two reasons why they went through that that theater, that drama, if you will. I think the number one reason was that it was like a scorecard. Those 14 points showed that Iran was winning on every single point. Every single point was a score for Iran. And so the world could clearly see, that Iran had won the war clearly, and that Donald Trump was signing a surrender document. Even though he didn't intend to live up to it, at least he signed it. They have his signature. That's a part of the historical record now, that Iran defeated America in war. And Donald Trump put his signature on the dotted line. Now, the second reason was just to have a formal record, a legal document that's in existence. But it was then to show that they had the power, that Iran itself had the power to enforce the agreement. Whether America liked it or not, we will take control of the Straits of Hormuz, and that's what they're doing. Whether you like it or not, you will remove your military bases from our region. We are kicking you out of this region. We are exerting our historical influence as the Persian Empire over this entire area, and get out. And so now, several weeks later, after the signing of that memorandum of understanding, we see that Iran is making its word bond. Iran claims major damage to U.S. military assets across the region. Refueling tanker aircraft, 8 of these refueling tankers that make long-range strikes against Iran possible. Now those tankers that refuel the jet planes have been taken out, 8 of them. Fighter jets and transports destroyed. Helicopters destroyed. UAVs, drones destroyed, 17 of them. These Reaper drones cost $30 million a piece. So you do the math, 17 times 30 million. Was that $210 million? And here's really the big story. The air defense systems, the THAAD radar, the Patriot radar systems, the air defense systems, all of them have been taken out. And so America has been blinded. She cannot see the incoming missiles. Therefore, she cannot defend herself against the attack that is incoming from Iran. Iran switched the tables on them yesterday. It has been the case in the past that while Trump was pretending to be negotiating, then they would do a sneak attack. Well, now Trump claims that Iran snuck attacked them last night. They said they only had minutes to respond to incoming ballistic missiles at a military base in Jordan. Well, why did they only have a few minutes of warning? Why didn't they have the usual half hour to an hour to warn them about incoming missiles? It's because they've been blinded. The radars have been taken out. And they're blind in the region. And they can't see what's coming in. Data intelligence centers. Some people would wish this would happen here. Destroy Amazon's data center. That they use artificial intelligence for targeting information, all that kind of stuff. Base infrastructure. I think I've heard different numbers. Some say there were 17 military bases. Some say there were more than 20. But all of them, however many there were, they've been destroyed. So where are the troops going to sleep? Where are they going to eat? They don't have a base. How are you going to take a? How can you have a plane take off and your runway is full of craters, or the hangar that your aircraft were in has been destroyed? Your maintenance has been destroyed. Your fuel depots have been destroyed. Your communication centers have been destroyed. Not only that, they have taken out the naval headquarters of the 5th Fleet in Bahrain. The 5th Fleet has been taken out. Yeah, the ships are still out there on the ocean, but they don't get any communications or commandments from the command center because the command center has been destroyed. So virtually America has no place to rest its head in the Middle East anymore. And so they're consolidating all of their forces in Israel. So there you go again, the combination of the Israeli and the American militaries. And so now the American forces that used to be in these bases spread out all over the region, now they're all concentrated in Israel. And guess what's next? I'll let you figure that out. Yeah, so here's the radar tracking arrays. This one radar cost $1 billion. That was the first thing the Iranians took out. Blind your opponent. Reminded me of Muhammad Ali, how he used to blind his opponents with them jabs. And here come the Houthis. The Houthis' missile and drone strikes target Saudi Arabia's critical energy infrastructure. The Saudis have been blockading Yemen for 12 years. They've been trying to starve these people to death for 12 years at the behest of England and America. And now the Houthis are striking back. That's not their real name. Their name is Ansarullah. Ansarullah. They just call them Houthis in the West. But they've destroyed the Al Ubaid oil processing facility. This is the biggest oil refinery in the world that just got destroyed. The Yanbu export terminal, the Jazan oil facilities, other energy infrastructure in Saudi Arabia. So not only is the Strait of Hormuz under the control of Iran, and they're only letting in and out the tankers, that are not, on the enemy side against them. And as long as they're willing to pay the 1.5% charge to pass through the Straits of Hormuz, then the traffic is free to go. You see? But now the Ansarullah has closed the Red Sea. And so now Saudi Arabia has now been isolated and cannot export any oil whatsoever. And with the destruction of the oil refineries, then it means there's not going to be any production anytime soon. How long will it take to repair those refineries once the war comes to a halt? So you see, that leads to a massive energy shortage throughout the entire world. Don't forget that the Ukrainians are bombing oil refineries in Russia as well. Now here's what that prosecutor that got murdered on the street was trying to find out. What happened to the $13 billion, Mr. Trump, that you took from Venezuela? Don't forget now, England already has stolen $24 billion from Venezuela. Venezuela was unlucky enough to have its national, national treasury on deposit in the Bank of England many years ago. And the English stole $24 billion from the Venezuelans. That's why Venezuela became such a poor country, because the English had already stolen all of their money. And now here comes Trump. He invades, kidnaps the leader, and now he's stealing the money. And the poor people, destitute. And I wonder what the story is behind those 2 earthquakes that happened down there. They killed, 30,000 people? This is the mindset of a pirate. Now, this is coming from Donald Trump's Truth Social. He posts things all night long. It's our oil tanker now. We're pirates. We're taking over the world. We're going to steal everybody's oil. We're going to control everything. Just a criminal mind. And of course, it's being countered by effective propaganda coming from Iran. Have you seen some of the Lego videos? Very creative, very devastating. Now here he is, Bibi Netanyahu himself. The American military high command knows that Bibi Netanyahu ordered his Mossad and stateside dual citizens to attack America using nukes on 9/11 on behalf of the Rothschild Khazarian mafia. Yeah, now suppose you were a military man and now you know that your military has now merged with this man's military, and this man and his military and his secret spy agency, they're the ones that caused 9/11, which ignited the war on terror that has led to the deaths of how many millions of people since that time, and the loss of your civil liberties as an American citizen. So we're going to take a look at some things to show you, where all this originates from. So Iran says no. Trump begs for a deal, but Iran says no. Because why would you make a deal with a liar? Somebody that you know is just scheming. And so they have the power to back it up. Now this is a look at history. I've mentioned this before. This is Woodrow Wilson, who was president of the United States about 100 years ago. Here's what he had to say. Since I entered politics, I have chiefly had men's views confided to me privately. Some of the biggest men in the United States in the field of commerce and manufacture are afraid of somebody, are afraid of something. They know that there is a power somewhere, so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive, that they had better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it. So it was during his presidency that there was a resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan. He premiered that movie, The Birth of a Nation, at the White House. Not only that, but under the coercion of these unseen forces, these unknown forces, he was coerced into adopting the Federal Reserve Bank Act in 1914. He established the IRS. He established the FBI. And of course, this was all done under the direction of the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith. And so those four entities, the Anti-Defamation League, the FBI, the IRS, the Federal Reserve Bank, those are all private entities that are controlled by the Khazarian Mafia. And basically, that was the time when the Khazarian Mafia took control of the American currency system and financial system and instituted an unconstitutional practice called the income tax. There's no such thing in the Constitution that calls for an income tax. But the income tax is necessary to pay for all of the wars that were being planned at that time. Remember, this was the prelude to World War I, and then came World War II, and then came Vietnam and Korea, and now comes the Third World War, engineered by the same unseen power. So the Khazarian bloodline, the world's largest crime syndicate, sometimes called the Khazarian Mafia. Now, in former times, you might see this term, the Northern Italian Black Nobility. Just another name for the same people. The Khazarian Mafia. You don't know what you don't know. The hidden history of the incredibly evil Khazarian Mafia. And that's Ukraine, the center of corruption for centuries. We now know that the Khazarian Mafia is waging secret war against America and Americans by the use of false flag Gladio-style terrorism. And via the illegal and unconstitutional Federal Reserve System, the IRS, the FBI, FEMA, Homeland Security, and TSA. We know for certain that the Khazarian Mafia was responsible for deploying an inside job, Gladio-style, false flag attack on America on 9/11, as well as on the Mora building bombing in April 19, 1995. So it's a history of dirty tricks and the overthrow of governments by any means necessary, by means of deception, to quote the Mossad. So here's some of the history. See, 100 to 800 AD, an incredibly evil society emerges in Khazaria. You see, from the year 100 to the year 800. Khazarians develop into a nation ruled by an evil king who had ancient Babylonian black arts, occult oligarchs serving as his court. During this time, Khazarians become known to surrounding countries as thieves, murderers, road bandits, and for assuming the identities of those travelers they murdered as a normal occupational practice and way of life. See, now that identity theft, you see, that's very current, because the current Prime Minister of Israel, Bibi Netanyahu, that's not his name. He assumed a different identity. His real name is Melankowski, and he's from this region of the world. He wasn't born in Israel. He was born in Poland, which was a part of ancient Khazaria. His name is Melankowski, but he adopted somebody else's identity whom he murdered. So in other words, that's an example of all of the Ashkenazi Jews from Eastern Europe, from Khazaria, who migrated into the Holy Land, and all of them left their Polish names, their Ukrainian names behind, their Russian names behind, and they took on an assumed identity. and parade themselves before the entire world as though these are the chosen people of God, that these are the real Jews. And they're not. They're imposters. And that's their culture. So I guess let me go back. So in 800 AD, the ultimatum is delivered by Russia and other surrounding nations. So Russia was a Christian nation, and all the other surrounding nations, they were Christian nations, and some were Muslims, and if you mean Turkey. The leaders of the surrounding nations, especially Russia, have had so many years of complaints by their citizens that as a group, they deliver an ultimatum to the Khazarian king. They send a communique to the Khazarian king that he must choose one of the three Abrahamic religions for his people and make it his official state religion and require all Khazarian citizens to practice it. So that's how they became Jews, because he decided the king chose Judaism and promised to stay within the requirements laid out by the surrounding confederacy of nations led by the Russian Tsar. Despite his agreement and promise, the Khazarian king and his inner circle of oligarchs kept practicing ancient Babylonian black magic, also known as secret Satanism. This secret Satanism involved occult ceremonies featuring child sacrifice after bleeding them out, drinking their blood, and eating their hearts. The deep, dark secret of the occult ceremonies was that they were all based on ancient Baal worship, also known as worship of the owl. In order to fool the confederacy of nations led by Russia that were watching Khazaria, the Khazarian king melded these Luciferian black magic practices with Judaism and created a secret satanic hybrid religion known as Babylonian Talmudism. This thus was made the national religion of Khazaria and nurtured the same evil that Khazaria was known for before. So 1200 AD, Russia and the surrounding nations have had enough and take action. About 1200 AD, the Russians led a group of nations surrounding Khazaria and invaded it, just like modern Ukraine, in order to stop the Khazarian crimes against their people, which included kidnapping their young children and infants for their blood sacrifice ceremonies to Baal. The Khazarian king and his inner court of criminals and murderers came to be known as the Khazarian Mafia by neighboring countries. The Khazarian leaders had a well-developed spy network through which they obtained prior warning and escaped from Khazaria to European nations to the west, taking their vast fortune with them in gold and silver. They laid low and regrouped while assuming new identities. In secret, they continued their satanic child blood and sacrifice rituals and trusted Baal to give them the whole world and all the riches as they claimed he had promised them, as long as they kept bleeding out and sacrificing children and infants for him. So now they're spread out from old Khazaria, and now they're invading all of the other countries of Europe, including England. The Khazarian Mafia invades England after being expelled for hundreds of years. To accomplish their invasion, they hired Oliver Cromwell to murder King Charles I and make England safe for banking again. Thus began the English Civil Wars, which raged for nearly a decade, resulting in regicide of the royal family and hundreds of the genuine English nobility. This is how the city of London was set up as the banking capital of Europe and launched the beginning of the British Empire. So essentially, the British Empire, for all of its glory, was actually an extension of the Khazarian Empire because Britain had been conquered. The Khazarian Mafia decides to infiltrate and hijack all world banking using Babylonian black magic, also known as Babylonian money magic, or the secret art of making money from nothing. Also using the power of pernicious usury, riba in other words, to accumulate interest. The Khazarian Mafia used their vast fortune to enter into a new system of banking, based on secret Babylonian black magic, money magic that they claim to have learned from the evil spirits of Baal, all the way back in Babylon. The Quran talks about the two upside down angels, Juj, Marut and Harut, I think. Marut and Harut, the two upside down angels in Babylon that taught them these devilish tricks. The Babylonian money magic involved the substitution of paper credit certificates for gold and silver deposits, which allowed travelers to travel with their money in a form that offered easy replacement should they lose their certificate or have them stolen. Yeah, so that's why you have paper dollars instead of real money, which would be gold and silver coins. That's why you don't have any real money. They have it. The Rothschilds as the front men for the Khazarian Mafia infiltrate and hijack British banking and then hijack the whole nation of England. So I'm not going to read through all of this, but essentially the Rothschilds took over the Bank of England in 1692, I want to say. And since that time, they have been in control of England. So that's why you see the various policies out of England that are so diabolical. The Khazarian Mafia wages an international effort to eradicate kings who rule by the divine right of God Almighty. See, what's that all about? Well, you see, the royal families and rulers of Europe, most of them, including the current King of England, Charles III, they claim direct descent from Jesus. They claim direct descent from Jesus. They claim that Jesus got married and had children, and there's a bloodline, and I think they call it the Merovingian bloodline. And that is what they claim gives them the right to rule over other people and makes them royal and makes you a commoner. But in other words, the point is, spiritually, they are saying that they are direct descendants of Jesus. Well, Jesus himself was a direct descendant of King David. He was of the blood of David and declared to be the Son of God according to the Spirit. He was the son of David according to the flesh and declared to be the Son of God according to the Spirit. Now, of course, the present King of England, Charles III, he claims direct descent from King David himself. He also bears the title, the King of Jerusalem. So since the Khazarian Mafia took over England, 4 centuries ago, you see how all this is tied up together? Because the Khazarian Mafia claims to have a personal partnership with Baal, that is the devil, Lucifer, Satan. Because of their sacrifices to him, they detest any kings who, under the authority of God Almighty, because most feel a responsibility to make sure that their own people are protected from infiltrators and treasonous enemies within the gates. So in the 1600s, the Khazarian Mafia murdered the British royals and substituted their own fakes. In the 1700s, they murdered the French royals. Before World War I, they murdered the Austrian Duke Ferdinand to start World War I. In 1917, they assembled their Khazarian army, the Bolsheviks, and infiltrated and hijacked Russia, murdered the Tsar and his family in cold blood, bayoneted his favorite daughter through the chest, and stole all of the Russian gold, silver, and treasures. Right before World War II, they murdered the Austrian and German royals. Then they got rid of the Chinese royals and disempowered the Japanese ruler. That's what they do. The Rothschilds create international narcotics trafficking on behalf of the Khazarian Mafia. The Rothschilds then covertly ran the British Empire and crafted an evil plan to recover the vast amounts of gold and silver the British had been paying to China for the high-quality silk and spices they were unavailable anywhere else. You see, what that's all about is when Marco Polo reached China and they opened up the trade routes, China didn't mind trading with Europe, but they only would receive or accept silver or gold in exchange for their trade items. And so Europe was so greedy for the Chinese goods that they, at a certain point, they had spent all of their silver and gold with China. And so to get the silver and gold back, they said we have to addict these people to opium. And that was the start of the opium trade. The Rothschilds, through the international spy network, had heard of Turkish opium and its habit-forming characteristic. They deployed a covert operation to buy Turkish opium and sell it in China, infecting millions with a bad opium habit that brought back gold and silver into the Rothschild coffers, but not to the British people. And that's, of course, the century of humiliation that the Chinese, are hurting about to this very day. Now look at this. The Rothschilds start the international slave trade, an enterprise that viewed these kidnapped humans as mere animals, a view that the Khazarians would impose on all the people of the world who were not part of their evil circle, which some called the old black nobility. Yeah, they viewed kidnapped humans, Africans and others, as mere animals. Isn't that what the Reeb said? That the Goyim are animals. They're beasts to serve us Jews. Animals in human form. So the Jews don't have to be served by beasts. The Khazarian Mafia Rothschild private fiat counterfeit banksters plot eternal revenge against the American colonists and Russia, who assisted them for losing the Revolutionary War. Yeah, part of the animus against Russia. Don't you know that Russia helped with the American Revolution? Otherwise, it would have failed. And the British never have forgiven the Russians. Don't you know that when they tried again with the Civil War in the 1800s, don't you know the Russian Tsar sent his fleet, his naval fleet, to protect the coast of America so America wouldn't be invaded by the British and the French? And so from the point of view of a black man, yeah, we'd still be on the plantation if it hadn't been for Russia and the Russian Tsar. But of course, that was an unforgivable act from the point of view of the Khazarian Rothschilds. And so they have been out to do Russia in ever since. That was part of the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917, to pay them back for what they did to help Lincoln win the Civil War. The Rothschilds attempt to retake America in 1812 on behalf of the Khazarian Mafia, but fails, once again because of Russian interference. So Russians have been running interference against these people for centuries. Finally, in 1913, the Rothschild Khazarian Mafia succeeds in establishing a major beachhead inside America, and an evil enemy of all Americans enters the gates of America. You see, so that's the Federal Reserve Act. We already talked about it under President Woodrow Wilson. In 1913, the Rothschilds were able to establish a beachhead by bribing crooked, treasonous members of Congress to pass the illegal, unconstitutional Federal Reserve Act on Christmas Eve without a required quorum. Now, what was the National Defense Authorization Act that was just passed? Coerced members of Congress, bribed by the Khazarian Mafia into treasonous acts, unconstitutional acts, combining the militaries of Israel and America into one united force. History repeats itself, doesn't it? The act was then signed by a crooked, bought-off president who was a traitor to America, like the members of Congress who voted for it. Yeah, Woodrow Wilson was caught in a sex scandal, just like Donald Trump and the Epstein files. Woodrow Wilson was involved in a sex scandal, and to keep that out of the news, he went along with this crooked scheme. The Rothschild Khazarian Mafia then created an illegal taxation system in America. Yeah, we've already touched on that. It's called the IRS, a private corporation, and they are the shareholders. So when you pay your taxes, you're paying money to private individuals, shareholders in a private corporation. And then they decide how much of the money they collect from you that they're going to give to the government. Totally unconstitutional. Now, the Rothschild Khazarian Mafia deployed the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia to extract incredibly savage, bloody revenge on innocent Russians, which they had plotted for many years, ever since Khazaria was destroyed. Yeah, they hold a grudge for 1,000 years. They're mad at the Russians for what the Russians did 1,000 years ago. They intend to pay them back, and they did. They overthrew the government, killed the Tsar and his family, stole all of the riches from Russia, and imposed atheistic communism on a Christian nation for 70 years. That's why they thought they could do it again. That's why they're trying to. That's what they're trying to do to Russia today, is overthrow it again, like they did 100 years ago. But then on the flip side, hey, that's actually what has happened in America. The Bolshevik Revolution has taken place in America, and these people have taken over the government. They run the executive branch. They run the legislative branch. They control the court system. They control the money system. They control the law enforcement. They control everything. And so the country has been taken. The nation that you have known as independent America no longer exists. It's been taken over. The Rothschild-Khazarian Mafia once again decided to sheep dip themselves and infiltrated and hijacked Judaism. In other words, these criminals decided to call themselves Jews and give Judaism a bad name. So all of the terrible things that Jews get blamed for, it's not really the Jews that actually followed the Torah, followed the law of Moses. Those are not the Jews that do that. No, it's these fake Jews, that adopted Judaism as a cover for their wicked religion, which is Babylonian Baal worship, child sacrifice. And so that's how they converted some of the Jews into becoming Zionists, just like they converted some of the Christians into becoming Zionists, who don't mind committing genocide and murder and thievery and all kinds of wicked crimes. The Rothschilds decide to mind control the American masses to make it much easier to manipulate them into approving their illegal, unconstitutional, unprovoked, undeclared, unwinnable, perpetual wars needed to make huge profits and gain more world power. See, remember President Eisenhower? He warned against the military-industrial complex that has now grown into the military-industrial intelligence, pharmaceutical, media complex. You see, mind control. That's what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said the War of Armageddon was all about. He said it's the battle for the minds of men, but at stake are the lives of men. So the Khazarian Mafia used its monetary power to gain control over all allopathic medical schools and set up and controlled the American Medical Association and other medical societies in order to make sure their agenda based on lies and deceit was continued. So we talked about this, I think, last week or the week before. There used to be 13 black medical schools 100 years ago and nursing schools galore, and now we're down to 4. This was the Flexner Commission that shut down anything that was not under the control of Standard Oil under the Rockefellers, who, of course, was a subordinate to the Rothschilds. And so that's why the American medical system is what it is. It's not really a system that serves the needs of its people very well, because it's a criminal enterprise. Okay, I'm not going to read all of this. But I'm going to post these articles. These articles were written some years ago, and I'm going to post them on my Telegram so you can read them for yourself in detail. It's just a little bit too wordy to do on a podcast. I'm just touching on some of the main points. Now, this is current since Benjamin Netanyahu is in town. Benjamin Netanyahu was meeting in a Fink's bar in Jerusalem, a well-known Mossad watering hole. Here is what he said, quote, "If we get caught, they will just replace us with persons of the same cloth. So it doesn't matter what you do. America is a golden calf, and we will suck it dry, chop it up, and sell it off piece by piece until there is nothing left but the world's biggest welfare state that we will create and control. Why? Because it's God's will. And America is big enough to take the hit. So we can do it again, and again. This is what we do to countries that we hate. we destroy them very slowly and make them suffer for refusing to be our slaves. So that's what Benjamin Netanyahu said. Now, this is very important, and this is what kept Barack Obama up at night as president. He wasn't worried about what Russia was doing or China. He was worried about what Israel might do. He was worried about a nuclear bomb going off in Manhattan. The Rothschild Khazarian Mafia planted 23 nukes in major American cities and other major cities in Europe in order to blackmail the associated government. Yeah. The Rothschild Khazarian Mafia has planted 25 nukes. 25 nukes in major American cities and other major cities in Europe in order to blackmail the associated governments. This is referred to as their Samson option and was first discovered and disclosed by Seymour Hersh. The Rothschild Khazarian Mafia has also gained some S-19 and S-20 warheads from a corrupt member of Congress assigned to the task to buy up Ukrainian MIRVs on behalf of the U.S. government in order to decommission them. Instead, he sold them to the Israelis and split the money, and other key congressmen were involved. This is high treason and a capital offense punishable by execution. Right after their attack on America, the Rothschilds Khazarian Mafia told the U.S. administration that they would detonate city buster-sized nukes in some American cities, including the District of Columbia, if the administration refused to allow Israel to create their own large police state occupation force inside America, based on the consolidation of all American law enforcement and alphabets under one central Israeli control. And that was the birth of Homeland Security. The new Israeli occupation force called Homeland Security was initially run by dual citizens and perverts. Former DHS Director Janet Napolitano is being sued for sexual harassment of men working at DHS whom she ordered to move their offices into the men's laboratory. Dual citizen traitor Michael Chertoff, a name translated from Russian as, quote, son of the devil, was the criminal mastermind that set up DHS, along with former head of the East German Stasi, Marcus Wolf, who was hired as a special consultant and died mysteriously as soon as his mission was accomplished. The Rothschild Khazarian Mafia never thought that they would get exposed for their nuclear attack on America on 9/11, but they made one of the biggest tactical mistakes in history and overplayed their hand from excess hubris based on too much easy success due to their extreme money power in the past. Now I was just showing this, maybe there's another image here that's See, so one of the major players in what we're talking about, this Khazarian Mafia, is Elon Musk. He's handling the advanced technological developments that are necessary to create a total prison planet. But now things recently took a bad turn for him. A month ago, he was declared to be the planet's first trillionaire. But in the last 5 weeks, he's lost $650 billion of that $1 trillion. So evidently he's down to about $350 billion now. And that's because all of his SpaceX projects are failing. Now, this is a kind of a busy slide, but this shows that all of his stocks, the Tesla Corporation, SpaceX, all the rest of them have collapsed. Have collapsed. He can't compete with China and their electric vehicles. He can't compete with China and their AI models. He can't compete with China and their constellation of satellites. Now again, some of the minor players in the Khazarian Mafia to keep the control lid on the population. Look at the elected mayor of New York City prior to the one that we have now, Mandami. Mandami says he would arrest Bibi Netanyahu if he comes to New York. Well, how come Eric Adams didn't arrest him when Bibi Netanyahu was in New York? because former New York mayor secretly honored Israeli soldiers amid Gaza genocide. He actually hosted a banquet or something to honor Israeli soldiers who had been involved in the genocide in Gaza while he was mayor of New York City. Yeah, this is some of Trump's nonsense that he posts on Truth Social. Yeah, this man has a comic book mind, wouldn't you say? I mean, he's like an adolescent addicted to cartoons. Now here's the playbook that some go by. This is the CIA official manual. CIA Manual of Trickery and Deception. So they study this stuff. Now here's, the Reeb. This is his gravesite in Brooklyn. And Trump at the Reeb's gravesite. He converted to Judaism in 2017 to keep up with the rest of his family. Here it is, the Reeb, the Bibi meets the Reeb. Let me see if I can blow this up so you can read it. This is when Bibi was first elected as prime minister. And he met with the Reeb. I came to ask your blessing and help. That's what he's saying to the Reeb. The Reeb says to him, what hasn't changed, however, is that the Messiah hasn't come. And he asked Bibi, what did you do today to bring the Messiah? So do something to hasten his coming. So from their belief structure, the only way they can get the Messiah to come is to wage the war of Armageddon. So was that the last one? I guess it was. Oh, right. So we made it all the way through. There's more, of course, to go along with this, but I think you get the deep historical roots of what is taking place. It's a spiritual war. It's a spiritual battle. It's the battle of good against evil, truth against falsehood, God against the devil. The Russians are very clear about it now, that they understand that they are waging an existential war against satanic forces, the forces of the Antichrist. And I think it's becoming clearer and clearer to more and more people that that is exactly what is taking place. And so each and every one of us have to decide, what side are we on? Are we on the side of God and the good and righteousness and lawfulness and peace, or are we on the side of devilishment and destruction and war, bloodshed? You see, and so the lines have been drawn. The outlines are very clear. And so each one has to make his own decision about what he or she wishes to do. So this has been the 19th element. We went a little bit longer than usual, but this is a very important subject matter, and I hope that you study it. And remember, I will post some of these articles that I'm using as sources, on my Telegram, Dr. Alim on Telegram, and also on YouTube. So thank you for being with us. This is the 19th element. This is your host, Dr. Alim, signing off. May Allah bless and keep you with the light of understanding. Assalamu alaikum. Now I got nothing to lose.